Hi, I'm an atheist, and we're gonna slide into my DMs. I'm really sorry for that intro. Okay, so first off, these messages are from my personal Instagram account, not the Instagram account that's linked to this YouTube channel. Don't worry guys, I know I'm not a real YouTuber yet, just a dork making videos on the internet. I just wanted to grab the handle that matched my YouTube channel name just in case I need to use Instagram to increase our reach. So I just thought it would be a cool idea to read you a conversation I had recently with a Christian. I've had a lot of friends from my past kind of reach out during this time of quarantine because I think one, people are bored, and two, it's like now we have the time to check on old friends. So anyways, a friend that I was a part of a church group with a long time ago, I was a part of the same church group from when I was 19 till I was about 22. And this is a person that was in that group. He just kind of reached out to me and we caught up and talked about other things. And then I just got really curious if he still had the same mindset because he hadn't mentioned it and because I couldn't really see anything on his Instagram about what his current worldview is. Okay, so I initiated the conversation by asking, "Are you still a Christian?" And he responded, "I am, and yourself?" "No, I'm not. I was just curious if your mindset had changed." "I mean, it's always changing and adapting, but I still believe in the gospel. Where are you at with it? Left Christ behind after the crisis?" So for the purposes of this video, there's going to be reference to a crisis or a family emergency that I experienced. It's common that a lot of believers in my life will assume that this crisis that I went through is the reason why I don't believe in God anymore, but that's not true. I changed my mind based off of science and reasoning, and it was not an emotional decision. But obviously a lot of Christians are going to look at that and say, "Oh, it's obvious, like, you went through some traumatic event and you're mad at God and that's why you don't believe anymore," because that's just kind of their line of thinking. So this is where I could get defensive and angry. And if people are trying to tell you about your own experience and why you believe what you believe, you have every right to feel angry and defensive. I'm not trying to take that away from anyone, but it doesn't set me up for good communication with somebody if I get angry and defensive. I really work on trying to choose my battles because I think emotional intelligence in these conversations goes a long way. I also could make a case for if someone is being an why you should dish it right back. If you want to see me make a video on that subject, let me know. But overall, I want to play the long game because I'm more interested in the ideas winning the war than my ego winning the battle. Do I mess up sometimes? Absolutely. Have there been times when I've been hormonal or tired and engaged in conversations like this? Yes, and it hasn't gone well, and I've learned from those mistakes. And I know someone recommending that you be humble when someone is being entitled could probably make you feel like you're in church, but try not to think of it that way. I'm just saying that someone's mind is hardly ever changed by a bad attitude. A vicious takedown is great for catharsis, but I think it is smarter in the long term to dismantle someone's argument without purposefully causing them harm. Do I believe we should never offend anybody? No, I'm running an atheist YouTube channel. Okay, so instead of reacting, I try to put myself in his place, skip over the defensiveness, and just answer, "It probably seems like that, but no, I didn't leave religion. Religion left me. There was just too much evidence to the contrary, and I couldn't justify my belief anymore. It wasn't even a choice I made, kind of like how you can't choose what food you like." So I'm still stating my point of view, but I'm not reacting emotionally. He says, "Interesting. That's really hard to hear. I'm sorry. Does it scare you at all?" "Yeah, I get that because at first it was hard for me, but no, I'm not scared because I think hell is a concept that was made up. Not trying to get into it because I don't want to make you feel bad or anything. I just honestly didn't know where you stood, and since that's how we know each other, I kept wondering. I remember you saying something like, I'm plateauing in my faith, one time on the beach like 6 or 7 years ago. And I thought that maybe that was your gut telling you there really is good reason to doubt. But I don't want to upset you or argue about it. While I may be able to be a more overt activist online, I really try to be strategic about how I have these conversations with people in my personal life. With friends and family members, I do try to limit how much I engage or argue. I want to maintain healthy relationships with my friends and family who still know where I stand. I am an atheist that is out, but I don't make my entire personal life about atheism. Do I shy away from these conversations if someone else brings it up? No, but I'm usually not the initiator of these conversations with theists in my life because I want to have a healthy balance in what I spend my time and energy on. And yes, I think really deeply and feel really strongly about certain things, but I'm a person too. And I said all this and I meant it because I actually wasn't trying to engage in this conversation with this specific person at this specific time. I really did just get curious. And I think it was on my mind because of this channel that I started. But as you'll see from me reading these DMs, and obviously why you're here watching this video, is that the conversation did continue. And I thought it was interesting. Maybe you'll take something away from it like I did. So anyways, the last thing I said was, I don't want to upset you or argue about it, and he responds with, not at all. It's a good topic. I won't argue or be upset. It's definitely tough. I really struggle at times, and I still find myself doubting and thinking it's crazy sometimes, but I haven't been able to justify ignoring it. How empty would life be? What would stop me from committing everything in my life to my own pleasure, you know? Why do anything if nothing really matters? So I actually think that when you try to level with people in a calm way, if you make yourself vulnerable and you're honest, people are more likely to be vulnerable and honest with you. But anyways, this was my response to him. It's not crazy. Humans have needed religion to explain the answers to all of those questions, actually. I just think we have better explanations now with science and secular reasoning. I also think Christians tell other Christians that life will be empty without God, and so you end up believing it because you're told over and over. This sounds so worldly to you, I'm sure, but I'm the happiest and healthiest I've ever been. People kind of argue from both sides of their mouth because they say, look at how empty people are without God. And then when non-religious people are happy, they say their happiness is fleeting and self-indulgent. When I was having a really difficult time with my crisis and doubting, a family member gave me a book to help my faith, and I read the arguments of Freud versus the arguments of C.S. Lewis, and I tried to put aside my bias towards wanting to believe in God, because I thought, if God is real, I can look into things with no expectations, and he will show himself. So the book I'm referencing here is The Question of God, which is a book that, like I said, compares the arguments of Freud to the arguments of C.S. Lewis about God's existence and the implications it might have on reality. And it turns out the, in quotations, you will find God when you seek him with all of your heart verse is a perfect example of confirmation bias and self-fulfilling prophecy. In reading that book, I tried to put aside my bias of wanting God to be real and look at things from both sides and come to my conclusion in the most honest way possible. And he actually continues to surprise me with his responses. This is not really what I was expecting from this person. And that's a good reminder to me to go into conversations not expecting that I already know where people stand, even if I've known them for a really long time. So he says, "You're not wrong. Sometimes I feel like everything I know in every category of life is wrong. We only know what we've been taught. Generations of fallible, confused people. Sometimes I want to believe nothing is real, like we're living in a snow globe. I just don't want to believe in chance, which would be the explanation for everything if I didn't believe in Christ." I can definitely relate to this feeling. It is uncomfortable when you have gone a really long time or your entire life believing that there is this being with a plan that is in control, to even think about the idea that everything is just random and happened by chance. That's just something that someone who's been a theist for their entire life or a very long time is just usually uncomfortable with. Now, being on the other side of that and being an atheist, I know that believing that it's quite possible that there's nothing in control of all of this is actually more comforting to me now, because it's not as personal when things go wrong. It's not like someone allowed this to happen to me. I just take things a lot less personally now because I think of everything as random. And I just want to say that I relate to what this guy is saying about feeling like everything you know is wrong, because just even becoming more interested in science as an adult and learning new science all the time, new science like always comes out that changes my mind about something that I kind of always thought was true, like even eating breakfast. But that's off topic. But anyway, so I respond with, yeah, it's mind-blowing for sure, but wouldn't God exist by chance if he existed? People say God always existed, but how is that any crazier than saying that the universe always existed? And again, this is just two people talking in the Instagram DMs. There might be better ways to put my arguments, but I was just being a person talking to another person, and I can always think of ways that I could have said something better, but this is the real conversation that we had. That being said, if you can think of an improvement on anything that I've said, let me know in a comment. So he says, you're right, but both sides require a level of faith. In theory, one is right and one is wrong. I kind of felt like underlying vibes of Pascal's wager, which, if you don't know what that is, it's basically an argument for believing in God that states that it's better to believe in God and live as though God exists and be wrong than to not believe in God and be wrong. Because the idea is, if you don't believe in God and you're wrong, you'll go to hell. And I can definitely think of a few good rebuttals to this argument, but this is how I chose to respond to what this guy said. Yeah, but think in terms of finances, since I know you're good with money. Imagine someone asks you to invest your entire life savings in their company, but instead of offering any proof that their company is viable, they say that you should just believe in them. It's kind of like a pyramid scheme that you keep being asked to pay into with only someone's word that it will pay off one day. Instead, you could be using the money that you have in your hand for something that actually exists. So he continues my analogy in his response. Okay, but what exists that you can put your money in? Stuff, material things? You can still have meaning and be kind to yourself. I enjoy experiences more than materialism, but there's nothing wrong with enjoying stuff from time to time. So I wasn't actually being very clear here. I was trying to say that this guy and I were part of a church group that very much believed that you are supposed to be like Christ and die to yourself and be humble and put yourself last. Self-love is not a good thing. To be self-indulgent at all is not a good thing. We were a part of a group that very much believed that you were supposed to die to yourself in this life as an example of Jesus in order to share the gospel with others. Like, it was a very unhealthy mindset for me, and we took a very literal interpretation of the Bible. So anyway, he responds and says, you took it more literal. I was following up on your analogy, at least trying to, LOL. It's a good analogy and something that resonates as the stock market tanks. So I responded, well, if I were to respond with the analogy in mind, I would say, what you invest in is up to you. Man makes their own meaning. But anyway, the stock market will go back up most likely. That's me speaking like all old school Bible-y, referring to man as like all of us. But you guys hopefully forgive me for that. So he continues the analogy again and says, yeah, I guess that's true. Not everyone feels the need to retire. So I think that he was referencing worrying about the afterlife or going to heaven. I can only guess at what he's implying, so that's how I interpreted it. So I said, wow, we're taking this analogy really far, haha. That's kind of one of the problems I had as a Christian. I was so worried about a retirement or an afterlife that may never happen, that I didn't actually take the time to enjoy reality. The reality that I know is real. Like, not all of Christianity is bad. Developing your character is good. Thinking long term is good. But I did not balance it with investing in my mental health and general well-being in the present. And then I made a reference to the crisis as an example of how Christianity and reading the Bible put me in an unhealthy mindset to deal with life circumstances. And again, I'm going to leave that part out because the purpose of this video is to kind of talk about a real life back and forth between a Christian and an atheist, and a relatively healthy one, rather than give personal details, which I don't mind sharing, but just not in this video. He says, I agree, but at the same time, we're not supposed to worry about tomorrow or be anxious for tomorrow. And then he puts like /retirement /the afterlife. For those of you who don't know, he is referring to a Bible verse that a lot of people interpret as a commandment not to be anxious or worried, which again was not healthy for me, because then when I would feel worried and anxious, I would then also feel guilty for feeling worried and anxious because it was a commandment and I was breaking it and I was doing something wrong, and it was this horrible, horrible cycle for me. So anyway, I respond with, that's why the Bible is so contradictory. Don't worry about tomorrow, but base all of your decisions on what happens in eternity. And then I'm pretty matter of fact here. I say, this was earlier humans doing the best that they could to explain the universe. We have better ways of coping now. And he responds with, better ways of coping or better ways of explaining the universe? And I respond, both. We explain the universe to cope with our questions and uncertainties. And he responds with, interesting theories. Then he sends me a documentary and asks if I've watched it, and that's irrelevant to this conversation, so I'm just going to skip that part. But to give you context, I watched the documentary that he sent me, and I made a comment to him on the documentary, and it led us back into this conversation about the existence of God. So that's kind of what happened in the middle. Okay, so far it seems like this guy lost his sense of purpose when he broke his back and went a little cuckoo, but I'm giving it a chance. And obviously I'm making the comments about someone that I don't know in a private conversation, so I'm being a little bit more insensitive about how I'm saying things. He responds with, it's interesting that you say his traumatic experience made him cuckoo, causing him to abandon everything he once knew as truth, yet your traumatic experience made you abandon everything you once knew, and you wouldn't call yourself cuckoo, which I beg to differ. So this felt a little bit like accusatory, but I again try not to react and get emotional because I'm also used to this kind of thinking. It's something that I have navigated through for a really long time. You're the one who keeps interpreting that my crisis is the reason, though. I never said that was the reason. I gave a reason why Christianity might be unhealthy, and I'm not saying it's bad to question everything, but I questioned because of a lot of scientific research and not a whole lot of speculation. And I did go a little cuckoo for a while, but I based my decisions on critical thinking and secular humanism, which is very different from what this guy in the documentary is doing. No one is saying that I'm not cuckoo, but not all opinions are equally valid. Some opinions are based in scientific facts. So as I get more comfortable on camera, you guys will start to realize that I actually really love self-deprecating humor. I just find it really funny to make fun of myself. So that's kind of what I'm doing here when I'm saying no one's saying that I'm not cuckoo. I don't actually think that I'm cuckoo, but I think humor kind of diffuses things. So I'm trying to diffuse things with humor while also getting my point across that basing decisions off of critical thinking and scientific facts is very different than like speculating about conspiracy theories. It really is. And so that's the point that I was trying to make and what I was trying to communicate here. Then he says, touche. I guess I see it as the initiator, but I really don't know. And I respond with, college was the initial factor. The crisis is just what pushed me over the edge. Sometimes when you go through a crisis, you really should question things a little. But I was still a Christian for about 6 months after the crisis ended, and I would go to church hoping to still believe in God and all that. Then I looked into things more and found out that I actually don't believe. College will do that to people too. He continues, so you don't believe in any higher power at all. Like heaven and hell just don't exist. There's no evidence for that, no. I mean, for example, It's possible we live in a simulation, but I'm not going to base any decisions on speculation. I'm going to base my decisions on what is testable and provable. And he says, all right, fair enough. You seem convinced. There's a small distinction that I should make. Atheists are not convinced that there is no God. They simply aren't convinced that there is one. And so they therefore don't make any decisions based on faith, but rather secular reasoning. But if that was the cue to end the conversation, we can definitely leave it there. And he says, good clarification. It's not necessarily a cue. It's just not my job to convince you, or anyone for that matter, of one thing or another. And I just kind of say, okay. I just thought that was a conversation that went generally pretty well, and just kind of a fun, different video idea. I think it puts me more at ease to picture the person at the other end of the conversation as me in a different situation. I think that painting someone who disagrees with me as an other is outdated and archaic. Anyway, my voice is wearing out from talking so much trying to record this, so I'm gonna stop the video here. Thank you to all of the sweethearts in the community who have been just so supportive, and thank you for listening to me once again. Don't forget to smash like for good sound quality.